Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Monica and I create handmade macrame and fiber art. In this video, I will share the story of my very first woven wall hanging. I will take you through my process, the mistakes I made and the lesson I learned along the way, so you can avoid them in your own project. If you ever thought about trying weaving but felt intimidated, I hope this video will show you that you don't need to be perfect to create something beautiful. I usually work with macrame, but recently I've been curious to try weaving. I love dreamy, imperfect textures, but sometimes I also want to create myself with something more structured. So for this project I set out to create a piece that looks more like a painting. A simple mountains landscape with a sun in the sky. For the material, I didn't use a typical macrame cord. Instead, I chose a thin yarn, the kind you usually use for knitting or tapestry weaving. It's delicate, slightly shiny, and it has unique charm. Of course, you could use macrame cord if you prefer, but I really wanted that soft, fine texture this yarn creates. Now let me be honest, one of the biggest mistakes was starting without a clear plan. I just jumped in and began weaving without sketching out the composition, and first I felt that exciting, but soon I realized it made things harder. For example, the mountains ended up looking softer and blurrier than I expected. I wanted them to look misty and if covered by fog, but it was tricky to achieve without guidelines. The sharper shape might have worked better, but I required precision and a different weaving technique. This is where I learned an important lesson. Sometimes it's worth taking a few minutes to sketch the proportions or even attach a simple driving underneath the loom to use a guide. But here's the balance. I also believe that if you spend too long preparing, you might never actually start. So my advice is don't be afraid to begin, even if you don't fully ready. Mistakes are the part of learning process, and each of techniques use something valuable. Looking back, there are also things I would change about my color choices. At the bottom, I use white cords, and while they look fine at the time, I think now a brown or green tone would have blended better with the rest of the landscape. The mountains I mentioned were the hardest part. I wanted them hazy, misty effect, but I didn't turn out quite how I imagined it. Geometric shapes like triangles are always tricky in weaving. You need to think carefully about how the yarn overlaps. If you had planned more, it could have shaped them differently, maybe with a clear outline. Then came the sun, but at this point I had already learned from the mountains that creating a perfect circle with the same weaving technique will be very difficult. So I made different choice. I decided to use a fluffy textured method instead, almost like a pom-pom. It gives me an easier way to define the circular shape, and it also gives a lot of character and contrast to this piece. Honestly, I love how it turned out. So, what did I learn from this project? First, don't forget about the value of the composition. Even a simple sketch can save you a lot of frustration. Second one is thinking about color harmony. A smart change, like replacing the white cords at the bottom, can make a big difference in how balanced the piece feels. And the third one, adapt as you go. If one technique feels so difficult, there are usually other ways, so just try it. My son is a good example. I choose a fluffy texture instead of forcing a perfect circle, and in the end, I think it became my favorite part of this work. And maybe the biggest lesson of all, it's don't wait for the perfection. If you wait until you have the perfect plan, the perfect materials or the perfect skills, you might never start. It's better to begin, make mistakes and learn along the way. This was my very first woven wall hanging. And no, it's not perfect, but that's exactly I wanted to share it with you. I hope it make you to try your own project to start today. If you feel unsure, if I can do it, you can do too. Thank you so much for watching and being here with me. If you found this helpful, please give our video a thumbs up, subscribe for more macrame and weaving content, and let me know in the comments what's the biggest struggle has been when starting something new. I would love to hear the stories. See you in the next one.